Our next speaker is someone very familiar, the chief economist for the National Association of REALTORS. He's also the senior vice president of research, and that includes existing home sales statistics, affordability index, and home buyers and sellers profile report. He participates in many economic forecasting panels, including the Blue Chip Council and with the Wall Street Journal and Harvard University. Please welcome the esteemed Dr. Lawrence Yun.
Hello, Naples. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction. Well, I wish I was there with you all in person, but currently, I've been doing only NAR-related in-person travel. One of the travel was out to nearby your area, Marco Island. The airport will be in Fort Myers, but going through Naples all the way to Marco Island, that whole area, Southwest Florida, just amazing in terms of quality of life, especially for retirement destination. One area of disagreement I would say right now I will have with Brad O'Connor, is that I think the vacation home sales will continue to increase this year, next year, because the work from home, I think, will outlast the pandemic. Hopefully, at some point, we have this virus under control. Right now, it's going up, going down, up again, and all that kind of stuff. But even after the virus is done and over with, I believe that the work from home flexibility will be with us. That just means that why stay in San Francisco? Why stay in Chicago, New York, Washington, when one could actually work close to the ocean or the Gulf of Mexico out in Southwest Florida? Let me put the PowerPoint slide on the screen, which will help better illustrate some of my thoughts. Hold one second. And please let me know anytime that somehow this technical interruption occurs on the Zoom or at some point. So assuming everything is all right, the first slide that I want to share with you is this striking number. When I looked at this, I said, wow. The blue is the number of live births in the US, according to the National Center for Health Statistics. So in a given year, there's about 4 million live births in the US. And the number has been trending down, especially in 2021, or I should say 2020 during the pandemic and ongoing in 2021. Because one of the things on economic theory is that people do not want to bring new child in times of uncertainty. So perhaps whether it is pandemic or at least last year when the unemployment rate was high, that people thought maybe we should postpone. I know that some people thought being locked up at home will produce more babies, but actually that did not happen. So the number of live births actually went down over the past 12 months. Now, the red line is a sad line for the US. It's the number of deaths that occurred in the country, whether it is from natural death of old age, heart attack, automobile accident, or the drug overdose. And certainly COVID is contributing to this rise in the number of deaths. In San Francisco, I think there is a twice as high number in terms of people who died from drug overdose compared to COVID in the past 12 months, but it includes everything. So the total death has risen such that it is actually matching. Now, the overall US population is still rising because of immigration, the legal immigration that's occurring, but also the illegal immigration. Now, certainly we feel uncomfortable on that number. People want to control the border, but in terms of the actual numbers, the overall US population would still be rising, even with this birth and death statistic, because there's a number of people coming into the country. One recent development is that the rents are really beginning to strengthen. It's only occurring in the past couple of quarters. So before the pandemic, the rents were rising 3% a year. Then during the lockdown, vacancy rate rose. People went to parents' basement. They could not stay in their own apartment. So the rents really did not move all that much. But in recent months, rents are truly popping out. This data is from CoStar, which is showing 8% increase in rent from 1 year ago. But if one looks at other data, whether it is the apartment association or private multifamily apartment managers, all is showing something similar, 5, 6, 7% increase in rents. So why is the rent suddenly making a strong upturn? Well, so the apartment vacancy rate is falling. Job creation, jobs recovery is leading people to come out of parents' basement and seek out their own housing demand. But the reason why the rental housing demand is really rising is this chart. This is the total home sales. The red line shows the activity essentially before the pandemic, before this ugly virus showed up. And then we had the lockdown, so home sales plunge. But once the economy reopened, and Florida was one of the early states to reopen, consumers were watching record low mortgage rates, falling mortgage rates. So home sales surged like a huge wave. But if you look at the recent months, home sales are not the frenzy activity as it had been. Rather than the 20 multiple offers, now you are getting only 2 or 3 multiple offers if you are getting the multiple offers. So it is no longer frenzy. So sales activity is still above pre-pandemic, barely so, nothing major, but it is clearly showing that home sales are less strong now compared to what happened in the autumn months of last year. So the surge is over. People are not buying home, people are renting. And that's where the rental demand and the rent increases are occurring. This is the mortgage application to buy a home. Most people take out a mortgage. Maybe in Naples region, given you have the retiree population coming in, they don't want to take out a mortgage. So they're buying home all cash, but most Americans do take out a mortgage. And the mortgage application in recent months or recent weeks is actually below pre-pandemic. Home sales, as I showed you in the prior chart, or let me go back to the prior chart, is still above the pre-pandemic. So even though mortgages are sliding down below pre-pandemic, well, the gap is made up by the cash. We are seeing larger than normal cash transactions. It could be that some people got lucky on cryptocurrency, selling their cryptocurrency and buying home all cash, or the stock market is at a record high. But the multiple offer situation, you want to distinguish yourself in a multiple offer. And one way to distinguish is to say, look, I have all cash. Forget about those mortgage offers. Choose me because I have all cash. So maybe this is the reason why the cash transactions remain elevated. And certainly in your market where you are seeing many retirees, especially the wealthy retirees coming into your region, it would be larger than normal cash transactions. This is the movement at a nationwide basis in terms of the median price. So median prices were marching steadily. And then he made a sharp hockey stick upturn. Well, we are using a lot of reference to hockey, but this is a sharp upturn in the median price. So what is happening is that the rental demand remains strong or recovering strongly because some people are simply priced out. 1 year ago, home prices were 20% lower. So people could buy a home 1 year ago, but now at 20% higher prices, they're simply squeezed out and therefore they don't want to buy. I'm sure there are some small number who are concerned about housing market bubble. I would say it's not a bubble because we don't have an oversupply situation or those bad subprime mortgages, risky subprime mortgages. good thing we don't have those mortgages. So the chance of something that occurred 2007, 2008, I don't foresee. But some people may be concerned, and that's why also they are preferring to rent for a little longer period. But right now, the rental demand is very strong because people are simply getting priced out. This is a nationwide price trend in the country. And mortgage rates are at historic lows, but with prices rising so much, the people's monthly mortgage payment is rising. So low rates are not bringing the mortgage payment down, rather high prices is actually making monthly mortgage payment to steadily rise on a nationwide basis. And this is the median price in the Naples region. I think 2010 data, there's a lot of foreclosed property sales, a smaller size home getting transacted. Many wealthier homes, those were not on the market. So, this is really reflecting back in 2009, 2010, more about distressed property sales. But look at the recent years. Typical price, median price in Naples region were running about $450,000, but sharp upturn in the past 12 months, now approaching $650,000, $700,000 in the median price. So again, some buyers are simply getting priced out. Therefore, they are saying, time out, I'm going to rent for the next 12 months, and hopefully I'm in a better position to buy. But this rental period is raising the demand, and therefore rents are rising strongly. Home price increases is certainly a great news for property owners, homeowners, real estate investors. They're enjoying, but it's squeezing away the first-time buyers. But if we look at the total housing value across the country as reflected in the green line, it is at an all-time high, including making that sharp upturn in the past 12 months. The red line is the mortgage debt outstanding. So the mortgage debt outstanding is also at a record high, but those are inconsequential because the gap between the green and the red is the housing wealth. So there is a plenty of buffer. I agree with Brad in terms of I don't foresee a price decline. Prices growth over the next 12 months will not be 20%, but I think more normal 5% range. In Naples, maybe a little higher because you are continuing to see wealthy retirees coming into the region. But hypothetically, let's say there is a price decline. First, it will be a good news for first-time buyers. They will view it as a second chance opportunity. So any decline, there will be rush of buyers and quickly get the price back up. But second, even if there was a price decline, it's not going to cause any financial market distress because there is plenty of housing wealth gap. There's green line, much above red line, so it can easily absorb any price decline without causing any crisis to the financial market. This is a chart that is quite compelling. The wealth difference between a typical renter and a typical homeowner. The blue line, blue bar is 2019 and the official data from the Federal Reserve. They don't have the data for 2021. So 2021 data is my estimate based on recent price trend. So if you are a typical homeowner, you have about $300,000 in wealth. Most middle-class families have wealth in their housing, some from their retirement account, some money in the bank, but most related to their housing. And given the price increases, these are substantial wealth for a typical homeowner. While the renters are struggling. They're barely able to save up money. And now with the rents rising, it's going to make it even more difficult to save up for the money. But right now you see that substantial gap, which also highlights that home ownership is good for home buyers over the long term. Even those individuals who bought in 2005, they lost the property values, but it came back strongly now at an all-time high. Inventory level was very low. I found it very insightful when I saw Brett's chart on hypothetical, all those property that could go into foreclosures. If they were to reach the market now, it will be a welcoming news. I mean, certainly not an oversupply situation, but as you can see on this chart, that the inventory is making a turn for the better, but we are still way below what it was 1 year ago, 2 years ago. So this is the reason why we have a strong run up in prices. This is the reason why first-time buyers are getting squeezed out. This is the reason why we need to build more homes, bring more supply to the market, because without it, we're going to have this divide between haves and have-nots. Homeowners enjoying strong price gains, while the renters essentially feeling left out. So we need to assure that the ladder for the opportunity for home ownership exists, and only way to make that happen is to assure that home prices rise moderately, not spike upwards, for 2-3 consecutive years. So this past 12 months has been good in terms of homeowners, but the next 12 months will be critical in terms of prices not rising strongly in order to give first-time buyers a chance. Why do we have shortage of inventory? Because home builders have not been producing enough. Housing start, this is the number of new home construction across the country. Red would show what the country needs given the normal population growth, and also based on historical average. So from 1960 onward, in some years, it was a little above average, other years, a little below. But what has happened from the foreclosure crisis back in 2008 onwards is that America has been underproducing, consistently underproducing for 15 straight years. And the cumulative effect of this underproduction is we don't have enough inventory. And that is why we need to produce more. And I think in 2021 and 2022, my forecast, we will produce more. It will go above historical average, but still not enough to compensate for all the underproduction of the past 15 years. Housing oversupply chance minimal. Even with foreclosures coming onto the market, we need more inventory because we simply are in a tight housing shortage situation, including apartment shortage. So it's not only about the home ownership, single family homes on the market, but not enough rental housing available or housing units for rentals in apartments not available and causing the rents to rise. But the concern going forward over the next 12 months is that mortgage rates, the red line, which have been at exceptionally favorable conditions, we are no longer at the absolute low point of 2.7% as happened in December and January of this year. But we are very close to that level, 3% mortgage rates, very favorable. The green is what the interest rate the Federal Reserve is charging, something called Fed funds rate. And they are essentially at all-in, lowest possible interest rate, 0% on Fed funds rate. But when will the interest rate begin to rise? Well, before the Federal Reserve pulls the string on the green line, I think they will do something called a taper tantrum. And you will hear this phrase in the financial news more frequently. So what is taper tantrum? Well, best way to put it is the following. When your client gets a mortgage, whether it is from Wells Fargo, Bank of America, or your local mortgage broker, they're originating those mortgages knowing they can sell it to Fannie and Freddie. And Fannie and Freddie knows they can sell it to the Federal Reserve. So Federal Reserve is currently purchasing this mortgage-backed securities, MBS. Federal Reserve is purchasing Fannie, Freddie, MBS. It's making the market liquid. But one of the first things the Federal Reserve will be doing is they will taper, stop purchasing, or slow the pace of purchase. That means Fannie and Freddie has to sell it not to the Federal Reserve, but other buyers Who are these other buyers? It could be Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, or it could be German mutual fund or Chinese government. But they will only buy if they offer slightly higher interest rate. So once the Federal Reserve begin to taper, mortgage rate will inch higher. Moreover, next year, I think the Federal Reserve will actually be raising the short-term interest rates. Currently at 0, they're going to steadily increase. That means that will also push up mortgage rates. So from you and your clients or potential clients, when is the best time to lock in mortgage rates? I would say probably about now. It is possible that I am wrong in my forecast and mortgage rate may actually dip for a couple of weeks. But general trend is longer you wait, higher mortgage rates that you will face. Another negative is raising of G fees or guarantee fees. Fannie and Freddie, they charge slight fee to cover potential default. But as part of the infrastructure spending, it's not a bill yet because the Senate and the House of Representatives, they're trying to decide what is the right part. But it looks like they, as part of the infrastructure spending, which is needed in terms of building bridges, expanding Wi-Fi connection, as part of the funding for that, they may raise the G fees, which means that your client may have to pay an additional $200 or $300 in this almost like an insurance fund, but they're putting that insurance fund to pay for the infrastructure. So that's also a negative. But one positive development going into next year is that Fannie Mae will consider rental payment as part of their financial responsibility. So people who can demonstrate they can pay rents on time consistently, it will make it easier to qualify for the mortgages. So even at higher interest rate, more people may qualify for mortgages next year as they consider rental payment as a positive attribute for financial responsibility. So why is the Federal Reserve going to raise interest rates next year in my forecast? Because the inflation is getting out of hand. Inflation rate currently high is in 20 years or 25 years. I'm not sure, but you can see on the chart, it is getting very high, better than 5%. We had a meeting, NAR President Charlie Oppler with other people with the White House to express this concern about high inflation. And the White House believed that this inflation is transitory, meaning nothing to worry about. And by the year end, it will go back down to about 2% inflation. I'm not so sure, because not only is it an irritant, you are paying higher prices at the grocery store, you are paying higher prices at the gas pump. Realtors certainly drive more than the general population. It's annoying and it's irritant. But higher inflation, if it becomes permanent, is that Federal Reserve has to be more aggressive in raising interest rates next year. Rather than 1 or 2 rate hikes, they may do 3 or 4. So it is critical to see the path of the inflation going next year. And what are some items as to where the prices are rising? Used cars up 42%, because there is a computer chip shortage for building new cars, and therefore people are buying used car, and the inventory available at the used car dealer, those are depleting, and hence they are able to raise the prices. Gasoline prices much higher. Your new home buyer, they're happy. Now they want to buy a refrigerator or laundry machine. It's going to cost them dearly, up strongly. If you eat bacon, well, you are angry because prices are rising much faster than people's wages. As you go down the list, on the very bottom, college tuition appears to be manageable. Maybe the universities feel guilty about online education last year, and therefore most universities are barely raising any tuition this year. Rents, according to government data, which is part of the consumer price inflation, they're saying it's rising only 1.9%. I'm not sure if that's correct, or maybe the government will eventually catch up with other private sector data. I showed you at the very beginning, CoStar apartment data showing rent increases of close to 7%, 8%. So maybe the government data is lagging, which means that we may have actually higher inflation in the upcoming months as the rents data correct for what's really happening in the marketplace. But right now, the government is saying the inflation, 5%, is going to be transitory, but it could be permanent, which means higher mortgage rates for the market in 2022 or even later this year. Let me now turn towards the job market. We are not back up to normal yet. Before this ugly virus appeared, there was about 150 million Americans with jobs. And then we lost massively, especially in the tourism industry areas. Orlando was hard hit. Naples, restaurant business is hurt. So we saw large job losses, but steadily jobs are recovering. Stimulus package partly helped. So you see the jobs recovering, but not back to normal yet. Here is a 50-state variation. Before pandemic versus most recently available. Florida, down 2.7% in terms of total jobs. Georgia, Alabama, they're down more modestly, 1.4%, 2.3%. Louisiana, dark shaded color. Louisiana was hurting even before the hurricane, but now with the hurricane, it's going to be tough going. But if you look at the darker blue color states like New York, Michigan, California, they are down significantly because governors in this state had a stricter lockdown for a longer period. Florida was one of the earlier states to reopen, but Florida is dependent on tourism, and that's why you are down a little more than other states. Look at Hawaii, completely dependent on tourism. They're down 11% in Hawaii, while Florida is down only 2.7%. Only states to have more jobs now compared to pre-pandemic is Idaho and Utah. These are the only two states with more jobs today compared to before the pandemic. Now, if we look at the job market in the Naples region, metro market, from year 2000, it looks like the following. There was only 90,000 jobs back in the year 2000. Then during the housing market bubble, right before the crash, 130,000. Then the foreclosure crisis happened and you lost jobs, but then you had a long streak of job creation. You lost job during the pandemic lockdown, but now you are recovering essentially back up to pre-pandemic, at least in the Naples region. So about 150,000 plus jobs in the region. So these are very strong growth. Many people coming to Naples, they don't want job. They're retirees. They want to live a comfortable life, but they still need health care workers. They need some financial industry workers. They need restaurant workers. So as more retirees come, it also means job creation in the Naples region. The job market is not fully back up, but one thing that is really popping out is help one assign. There's help one assign record number in America, and I'm sure you see it. I know you want to have a good meal at a restaurant, but it takes a little longer to bring out the food because they're running into shortage situation. So job openings at a record high, even though total job employment is not back up to normal yet. Forecast that I have is that even though home sales are settling down, no longer frenzy, home sales will be up about 10% this year compared to last year. And the key reasoning is in 2021, you have 12 months of activity. Last year, 2 months was a lockdown, washed away, but this year, 12 months of activity. So even as the home sales are becoming less frenzy, it will be one of your best years ever. Then 2022, I actually see home sales coming down a bit because of higher mortgage rates, especially for the workers. But one interesting sector that is refusing to recover is the office sector. This is a work from home situation. Many companies will reevaluate about use of office. So New Yorkers, if they don't have to come to office 5 days a week, people are wondering, why am I in New York City? San Francisco, very expensive. One can have a mansion in Naples while they sell their small townhouses in San Francisco. So if work from home is a possibility and flexibility, many people will say, why don't I have a home in Naples, or at least second home in Naples? So they have a small apartment in those big expensive cities, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, Boston, but they also want to enjoy their second home in Florida. And consequently, the vacation home sales are popping out. And I think this will continue to grow in 2022. So this is a quite new phenomena, I think clearly benefiting Southwest Florida. So thank you for listening. And now I am going to turn it back over to the host. Thank you.